Thank you. Hello, everyone. Usually, when we hear about startups, or the ecosystem, we don't usually think about Haiti and think about the Caribbean region. But today, our panel is going to really show you and hear and teach you some things that some of us may not be aware of. My name is Arlene Graham. I am the founder and CEO of Global Idea Synergy and Caribbean Returning Nationals Foundation. Today, our panelists include Dr. Claire Nelson. She is an Ideathon leader. Also, we have Sebastian Vidal from Parallel 18, which is a startup in Puerto Rico. That's it for us? Okay, oh great, oh wonderful, wonderful. So today we will really share what the islands are doing in terms of innovation. Thank you guys for being here, of course. Now, I have a number of questions. I'll just throw it out to you all generally. What does the tech startup footprint look like in the Caribbean region? Sebastian, can you tell us what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, is it working? Yeah, well, this is working. Yeah, so first of all, I'm not originally from the Caribbean. I'm from Chile, South America. But I've been living in Puerto Rico for the last 2 years. And I have I would say, a clear idea on how it can work and how it's been working in the last 5 years in terms of the startup ecosystem. I believe that there's a huge opportunity in terms of the Caribbean being like this bridge between bigger markets, right? One is the Latin American market, the other is the US market, and how these different countries can play a role on that connection. No? And so Puerto Rico has something to say, Haiti has something to say, and Cuba has something to say. And I believe it comes down to different things. One is talent, and I think, and that's why I'm so excited to be here, because I think the IT Tech Summit, it's an example of unite and collaborate between young talent that wants to do things differently. And I think that's the biggest asset that the Caribbean has now. As they mentioned before, Jesse mentioned it before, that connection between what you have now in the Caribbean and what it is in the US, for example, the talent that is there, that connection is what's the potential.
Yes, okay. The same question for Dr. Nelson.
I actually want to step back because the last presentation is critical to the future. And I want us to actually now jump into 2030. Christine started off by saying something very important. This is a 13-year project to get to 2030. So the first question is, we're having a tech summit and talking about a tech ecosystem, but for what purpose? Innovation, Islands of Innovation is the name of this panel. But to what purpose? We have to innovate around the issues that are going to keep us as an inclusive, sustainable society by 2030. So we're looking at the 2030 goals as a mindset, as Christine said, and technology as a cross-transversal platform to move us forward for health, education, and wealth creation, and of course, environmental sustainability. What the last speaker just said then becomes very important, because the Tech Summit, in terms of people, the transformation has to begin with what I call the integrated development framework, the identity. Who are we? It's not enough to have talent. There's lots of talent in the region. And so now with companies like Access Haiti or Digicel, every average young person has access to an internet. But if we are not able to really understand the cultural identity of the region and of the systems, the ecosystem content, so it's the government, the policies, the people, the private sector, the different relationship capital that does not necessarily flow in the same direction, we're not going to be able to make those contact points to create an ecosystem that works. And so for me, the tech has to start with, how do we first truly define the causal layers that are necessary for an ecosystem to flourish?
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. Joining our panel is Alan Delmonte, and he is from Startup Grind, Santo Domingo. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Can you answer that question as well? The question was, what does the startup footprint look like for you in the Caribbean?
Well, something very interesting I'm currently seeing is in a place like the Dominican Republic, for the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a tremendous growth and strengthening of the Santo Domingo and Santiago ecosystem. But something that is even more interesting would mean to see Caribbean ecosystems joining together and sharing resources. I think the Dominican Republic and Haiti share this island, and it's interesting to me to see how disconnected we are. And these platforms, I think, are very important to really integrate, really, utilize the resources we have over there, the resources you guys have here, and work together. And I think this is a great place to start.
Wonderful, wonderful. Is the current startup ecosystem, is in place? Is it self-sustaining, Dr. Nelson? Or
Well, I certainly know that in Jamaica, are you hearing me?
yes.
I certainly know that in Jamaica, for example, Development Bank, for example, has been trying to put some funding. We had a venture capital conference last year in Jamaica talking about, again, how do you create ecosystems? You have the Branson Center creating entrepreneurship. But again, there's a sense of disconnect between what I consider, let's say, the private sector, the financial sector in the Caribbean, which has largely been, as you know, a trader class, right? So a lot of trader class in the Caribbean are used, and it's family wealth. They're not public companies. So there's no sense of, say, investing somebody outside of their own family. That's the first thing. Secondly, there's no government money willing and able to take the risk. So we are really having to have this internal transformation to understand that the products of 2030 are not going to just be sugar, brown sugar exports. That indeed, if we look on the sporting culture, we look on the culture of art. So let's take Haiti. Imagine, if you will, 2030. And I have this vision of this headline that says, the Jacmel Arts Institute that was founded in 2017 with a $1 million investment arising from the Haiti Tech Summit has returned a $1 billion investment in a blockbuster film animation out of the Jacmel Art Institute, which is the Tiange and Friends suite of film products. Now, is that impossible? Right. So what you would need in infrastructure, we would need, first of all, companies that are here like Adobe and Google saying, let's use what the current capital is. We have art capital. Everybody knows about Haitian art. So that's the capital. Let's take those kids and we're going to teach them how to do animation, graphic design using software. Now we're going to take that, we're going to take the stories from the Caribbean region, we're going to link Tiange with Anansi, with Sukiya, and all the other characters, and we're going to create a film that will transform the global cultural space using Caribbean culture in a different way. Is that possible? Yes. But requires money to invest in film, for example.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Nelson. Thank you, Dr. Nelson, for that. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move along. There are some other questions that really require answers. Is the Caribbean ecosystem, the current Caribbean ecosystem, basically able to maintain, grow, and sustain itself? Dr. Nelson mentioned a few things. Without basically the cash and resources of Silicon Valley and Europe and others, are we able to sustain ourselves? Are we able to grow? Alan, can you answer that question, please?
And well,
how can we?
In the case of the Dominican Republic, we've certainly seen a lot of companies having to bootstrap. They haven't been able to get funding or scale beyond the country scope. But these companies are sustainable, and they are employing people, they are moving the economy, and I think we need to start from there. We need to create companies that work in-house first, and then think about scaling and globalization, because first of all, we don't have the resources most of the time to scale. So if we at least can start and building solid, startups in our nations that work, I think that's a great place to put our eyes upon.
Right, okay. Do you think, Sebastian, that the government is really ready, innovation ready here in the Caribbean region? What are your points on that?
That's a good question. I think, so I've been working with different governments, the Chilean government, the Puerto Rican government, and those are the ones that are giving me the funding to fund companies and accelerate companies. And I think it's you have like three options. One is either the government needs to take a step aside and just let the entrepreneurs grow and eliminate rules and eliminate regulations for them to grow and taxes. That's one part. So you don't need the government. The government needs to step aside. The other one is like you actually invest and be aggressive about it, right? So if you take risk in this industry, you're gonna see results. So in the case of Chile and the case of Puerto Rico, they decided to make an investment. So we have invested more than $3 million in Puerto Rico, and in Chile it's like $50 million only in a startup investment. So that's a decision and a commitment that you need to do, and it needs to be very straightforward. And another thing in terms of government is like government needs to be involved in terms of funding, but needs to leave independent in terms of how to manage the program. That's the hardest part.
Sector.
That's the hardest
Right.
part because government don't want to lose control in terms of communication, right?
Right.
But for that to work, they need to allow that program and those programs to live independently.
Right. You mentioned Chile. Now, we all know that Chile has had some very successful programs. How much of the model do you think, Sebastian or Dr. Nelson or Alan, the model that Chile has developed, can we bring and overlay in the Caribbean region?
I think it's first of all, it's not replicable. So it is not because the Startup Chile model is so great. It's because it requires a lot of what you just said in terms of the identity of each one of the countries. So you need to understand the identity and the challenges that these countries are passing through. And then you create a program that is designed to this stuff. So it's not equal to each one of the countries.
Yeah, because the whole issue of, for example, the slogan, break things. Now, be honest now. All of us that are born Caribbean region, break things in who for house? You can't go break things in your mother house? No. So if you're taught in primary school, in high school, you don't break things. You don't fail. We are not taught to fail. We are supposed to pass exams and we're supposed to do well. So that whole lexicon of if you don't fail, try and try again, that whole model and mindset has to be part of the new culture of education going forward. So if we're talking about whether it's an IDB investment or a World Bank fund or Compete Caribbean funding the region, which where the money is coming from, we're going to have a mind shift when it comes to risk taking, because traditionally we have not been trained in the Caribbean as people to take risks because we're coming out of slave societies. That is a reality. So then how do we create a model for an ecosystem for technology that requires that mindset shift that will work? And I think it's where the diaspora comes in as a very important catalyst.
Exactly. We'll talk about the diaspora. We'll talk about the diaspora at the end of the conversation. But I have a question for Alan. You are a marketing expert, so to speak. The question is, are businesses being connected to the right players in the marketing game in terms of Caribbean business, do you think, in your experience?
I think we can certainly work harder on that part. Mm-hmm. For example, look at the Haiti Tech Summit, how Christine and their team were able to get the news out there, not just for the Caribbean region, but for the whole world. And I think that was an amazing job they did, because we all found out that this was going on. And it's not that easy. People would think it's easier to do that, but it's really hard to get on Inc. magazine and these important publications. And I think part of the problem we have in the Caribbean is exactly that. It's difficult for us to access these type of platforms that allow us to spread the information and to spread the news and bring more attention to our countries.
This question is open to everyone, the panelists. As the lead of your organization, and we will start with Dr. Nelson, what are some things you would actually do in the Caribbean region to innovate or to encourage innovation? What are some of the key things? We want clear answers. What are the next steps?
Okay, so culturally, always start from an asset base. What are assets? Globally, we're already known in terms of Haiti for Haitian artwork. We're known for food, we're known for tourism, we're known for music, we're known for sport. So then from a future standpoint, I'm a futurist by the way, so what's trending? So technology is trending and changing things. So let's take, for example, biotech. If you look at biotech combined with, say, the culture of the Caribbean, herbs, in this case, herbs for real, right? We should be having some people looking at investing in those two sectors and a marriage between those two sectors. In terms of music, if Caribbean music and dancehall music is pumping parties around the world, we're moving towards wearable technology, for example. Somebody ought to be thinking about how do we take Caribbean music, tie it into wearable technology, tie it into, for example, perhaps solar, wearing clothes, and create a new model of a product that the young person is going to want. So you have to basically start off with what we do well and is already known, and that is easier than to become a track, an ink, or a home company. Because they're not going to believe that we're going to do well at things that they don't know us to do, like heart surgery. But we come with music and add technology into that, it's easier to get people to buy into our countries as a space of innovation.
Right, right. Okay, wonderful. Alan?
I think the key resource that we need to work on is education. I think in Caribbean, there's a lot of great ideas. There's enormous problems we're facing, but and people have great ideas, but when it comes to time to get the tech people to do it, that's when we hit, we hit a wall. And I think I see Silicon Valley and I see all these boot camps and all these education platforms where, students, 18, 19-year-old, they go there in 2-3 years, they become great in technology, know how to code, they really understand how can they solve the problems we have and take those ideas and really create a great product that actually can solve it. And I think if the government, if the private sector, we all combine and really get that pushed forward, I think that was going to make all the difference.
Very good point, Alan. Just piggybacking on what you said about education. Last year in 2016, my organization, Global Idea Synergy and Caribbean Retailing Nationals, had a innovation challenge where we brought 1776 to the region. And I'm telling you, there were a lot of talent, a lot of startups, a lot of innovation companies that actually came from throughout the Caribbean. They showed a major interest in getting mentorship and having, being able to expand their whole education basis and so forth. So a very, very good point. So before we leave today, we really need to be committed to, a lot of us who are doing successfully, we need to adopt someone. We have a lot of Caribbean countries and territories, adopt a student, a young professional to help groom them to where we want them. Organizations like myself, Dr. Nelson's and others can facilitate that. Sebastian, what is your answer regarding the question regarding how would you actually innovate?
Well, so I'm totally agree with Alan. I think if you're gonna put resources in place, like bringing experts from all over the world, and you create your success cases as well, you need to make sure that those cases and those experts and those investors actually connect with the local community in a grassroots level. If that doesn't happen, you will never transmit that knowledge, and that's very, very important. So I have seen companies in Puerto Rico, for example, that I met them and I know that they can be global and they're just not looking globally. So it's a change of mindset as well, and the only way to create that is to collaborate more with people that already have had that success or that global mindset.
Wonderful. So we are talking about collaborations, we are talking about education, we are talking about mentorship.
And I just hit upon an idea based on what you said.
One second, yeah. Dr. Nelson, and we also talked about some of the points that Dr. Nelson had brought up before. Now, we need a very important point we need to discuss is diaspora. What role does the Caribbean diaspora? We have a massive brain drain in the Caribbean region. What role does the diaspora play in actually facilitating, to mentoring, to helping these young startups and these young people really get to the next level. Dr. Nelson, I'm going to ask you that. You have been involved with the diaspora for many years. So what is your response to that?
Well, on the education front, for example, a lot of diaspora, on the official organized diaspora, I want to challenge those of us who are here from wherever we are, who are the Caribbean diaspora, to look at our alumni associations and decide collectively but individually to perhaps create a Caribbean diaspora innovation incubator system where every high school has a similar lab that we each pay for individually as a school alumni. That will tie into what you're saying about education. We control it, so the government is not involved. We as diaspora external will fund these labs in our high schools. That's number one. Two, on the financing session. Most of us are not billionaires, but we spend our money, we buy raffle tickets, we go to a festival, we go to a tea party, we raise money. But what if we talk to our people here, and I'm sure they are here, that know how to do funds? What if we were to really seriously decide to do what Marcus Garvey did, reboot Haiti, reboot the Caribbean by rebooting the Black Star movement of Marcus Garvey and saying, look, let's each put $100, $500, $1,000 into this fund that will now, because we can afford to risk that money, right? Some of us can afford to risk at least $500. We buy our shoes for that $500. So put that $500 into this fund.
That's right.
These young people that are going to be picked by guys like you who know the industry, we're going to take a risk and fund these kids. Why should we wait for everybody else to fund us when we can do something ourselves?
Very good point, Dr. Nelson. Very, very good point. This requires a standing ovation. Now, I am piggybacking based on what Dr. Nelson just said, and I'm throwing this out to the audience. How can you really help the next generation? How can you help these startup companies? How can you help the youth, the young professionals and so forth? I want you to think about how can you commit an hour of your time a week or whatever it is to mentor a student. There are many people here in this, like myself, Dr. Nelson, the lady from the previous panel, who these organizations are committed to helping these young people get to the next level. We have to collectively come together, not just provide brain knowledge, but also financial knowledge as well. $10, $5, whatever it takes. Find a trusted gateway to give and give back. So think about it and please let us know by the end of the session. Alan?
Something very interesting we're doing in the Dominican Republic is we're actually taking the biggest businessmen in the country to mentor the mid-level entrepreneurs and the technology entrepreneurs, and those mid-level entrepreneurs to mentor the students. So we have this chain of mentorships, which is actually empowering the whole community and creating the culture, as Ben Horowitz was saying before, of having the responsibility as an entrepreneur and as a successful entrepreneur to not only work for yourself and your employees, but also to work for your nation. And the best way to do that is actually mentoring others to create that economic strength and culture and that culture of collaboration that's so important for us to grow.
Right. Sebastian, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I think, we built a program. We have 100 mentors, and 40% of them are investors. And most of them are Puerto Ricans that are living in the US. And I think it's an amazing start, because after that, we have generated investments. These mentors are investing in the companies and creating a lot of value. I think what's really, really important is, like, if you're going to commit these mentors that are busy with their time and it's not easy to bring them down, you need to create a structure locally that is very, very powerful for them to come here and not waste time, because they're going to do it once, but not going to do it again. So you need to have a structure that is very professional, put in touch with a lot of talent, so you can see value afterwards and measure everything. Metrics are very important in this industry.
Right, exactly.
And building on that response, it's great to know that Startup Grind Haiti just opened, and it's exactly that type of platform where every month people can gather, people can know each other, the technology community can meet the investors, and the investors can meet the students, and everybody's together. And I think that's a great way to build a really strong ecosystem.
Okay, wonderful. Do you have anything else to add as it relates to the diaspora? Dr. Nelson?
Well, no, but just to again say, I'm really serious about this idea of financing stuff. Some of you who live in the U.S. might know that this whole new package around U.S. government officially saying that they want the diaspora engaged in U.S. Caribbean relationships. So we have an opportunity, despite the optics of what things might look like, to use the law to our advantage. We have organizations to help us. But I just want to say one important thing. As we look towards 2030, and I'm very happy that Christine has placed this conference on the agenda of the UN SDG goals.
Yeah.
Remember that the sustainable future we want must be inclusive growth, right? We want a new paradigm. That is also going to be driven by what we're now calling in the Caribbean blue growth, looking at the marine and the maritime economies as space. So we need new ideas, new technology to look at how do we ensure that when we're using coastal zone issues, fishing communities need technology, right? Shape stories. We need people who are working in that space. And finally, if you think about it, remember on spaceship Earth, as Buckminster said, there are no crew, that there are no passengers rather. All of us are crew. So all of us have the responsibility to move the needle of thought forward.
Thank you guys very much. Remember that we are the miners. We are the 20th century miners, and we are just waiting to see what the Caribbean islands, Haiti in particular, is waiting to just expose and explore. So once again, thank you very much for listening to being a part of the Islands Innovation. Thank you.
And one other thing, guys, we're here to create partnerships, as I said before. And we really need to get these two countries together, the DR and Haiti, really work together. I think that's going to bring us both up and make all the difference.
Ignite the Caribbean. Ignite the Caribbean is a slogan that we're using in Washington, D.C. Ignite the Caribbean. Inclusive growth needs, right, inspirational and transformational and evolutionary leadership. Remember that.